I'd like to welcome here now, together with Graeme, Michaela Egarter and Wolfram Sparber. And I would like to invite you to come to participate in the panel discussion. In deutscher Sprache würden wir sagen, Wolfram Sparber in diesen Hallen vorzustellen, bedeutet Eulen nach Athen zu tragen. So I'm very, very happy that I can welcome Wolfram Sparber. He's the head of the Institute for Renewable Energy at EURAC Research here in Bolzano. Wolfram is heading the biggest institute at EURAC, which focuses on renewable energy applications and energy efficiency in buildings and cities, and counts over, by the way, over 120 collaborators, which is quite big for the dimensions here in Bolzano. Since 2020, he serves as Vice President of the Association of European Renewable Energy Research Centers, EUREC, and before that, he was Vice President of the European Technology and Innovation Platform for Renewable Heating and Cooling for over 5 years. Next to that, he was the chair of the board of directors and chairman of the executive board of the North Italian energy supplier and utility company SEL, later Alperia. Many of us know Wolfram also in this position. What I like to say is that Wolfram is a scientist, but Wolfram is also a person, a personality, a leader, applying all these scientific discussions in a very, very concrete way. And this is what it's reflecting definitely also EURAC. So great, Wolfram, that we can talk together with Graeme Maxton and with Michaela Egarter. She's coming from a completely different environment. She's the first and still one of the few female Alpine guides trained and professionally active in South Tyrol. Currently working at the Alpine Schule Pustertal, located in the Italian Dolomites. She knows a lot about mountains. She knows a lot about Alps and all the critical, difficult, sensitive environments in the mountains. We were thinking, Michael de Rachewils and me, that it would be a great possibility and opportunity to discuss in this context. Yeah? On one hand, from Taiwan, Graeme Maxton. On the other hand, the local scientific competence with Wolfram, and then let me say, the life experience of dealing with mountains of Michaela. Danke, dass du auch zu uns kommst und mit uns gemeinsam über die Herausforderungen zum Thema Energie diskutierst. Ich würde, Wolfram, bei dir beginnen. I would like to start with you. Coming back to Graeme Maxton's speech, I saw some really interesting slides. So, no serious plans for change, still 75% plus energy from fossil fuels in 2040. That was one slide. The other slide, making the reference to Paris. No cuts till 2030, but we need to be cutting emissions now. Or another really impressive message by Graeme, that we need change regardless of the social and economic costs. So now coming back to your background, what about energy? So what is your view on the situation, on the world, on the planet, on the future, but probably much more in the present? And what is that what we eventually can do? I know that this is the question of the questions of this planet, but let us start with the current situation.
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for organizing all this, for giving us the chance to discuss this, to do this. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks for inviting Graeme, and congratulations, Graeme. I think the numbers you show and the graphs you show, obviously I know them very well, but nevertheless, the way you presented was extremely clear, and so congratulations to that, and I hope you can spread your word as far and as fast as possible. I think this is exactly what is needed, and unfortunately, just 3 days ago, in order to bring what Graeme said on a global scale to a local scale, there was presented the Klimaplan for the region 2050. And many of the elements you showed, although we are in a situation where we are, I would say, quite comfortable, because we already have a lot of renewables, we don't have big industry, we don't have the really heavy and very difficult decarbonized sectors. Nevertheless, I'm missing a lot in that climate plan of the words that you say. I'm missing the urgency, I'm missing the understanding of the fact that we have to act now and immediately. We are talking in that climate plan of a target of 1.5 tons of CO2 per capita, only related energy, excluding agriculture. So we are far from net, and we are even further away from really zero. And I have the feeling that it has not arrived yet, exactly what you say, regardless the cost and the need. And we are working on very small technological level, but since over 5 years now, we do as well overall energy system modeling, where we put all the figures in a single model in order to see how renewables can grow, how efficiency can grow in order to reach certain CO2 emission targets, and what is the actual cost. And the funny thing is that if we look at regions as ours, as the added value for fossil fuels is close to zero, because we pay them and we import them, but they don't give an added value to the region. For the region, the fact to decarbonize is actually economically a clear win-win, because you need more jobs for efficiency, you need more investments for renewables, you need more grids, you need much more things being done on local level in order to import less. So of the money you already spend today, you would spend similar figures, just in a different way, and get much more economic value on the region. And still, it is so difficult to get things out. So very simple things, as you say, let's take the heating sector of residential buildings. We know exactly how to make a building which produces no CO2. And still, we don't come to the point to say, no, look, from a certain year onward, there won't be any oil heating systems anymore. And maybe a couple of years later, we won't build any gas systems anymore. So these simple, let's say, decisions, but obviously you will have a gas lobby which is not happy. That is part of the game. Because there's somebody who used to do a certain kind of business for 10, 20, 40 years, highly profitable, and he doesn't want to change. Okay, that's fine. But as a policymaker, as a society, we have to decide. We don't want to cut single jobs, but we have to change the way that people are living. And this has not arrived fully yet. And yeah, I hope as well the discussion that we have today and the figures you show can help a bit to get more courage into that plan and into what has to be done.
Yeah, thank you, Wolfram. Graeme, a question to you. So I guess there is a common understanding of the urgency. You were talking about political systems, democracy as a corrupted by big business. But on the other hand, you were talking about the new ecological civilization. Now, both of you, what do we need? Do we need to change the prerequisites in order to make it possible that the urgency will be seen by societies, and first of all by the political system itself? This political system is always reflecting the societies. So what to do in this context? Graeme.
Yes, I mean, obviously this is a very difficult question because the urgency is that we must cut emissions. We have to do that first and then think about a new economic system second. to develop a new economic system where we live in balance with nature, probably needs something like a new enlightenment. It may take many years before we can work out exactly how to structure that system, but we can begin that process. I think, you know, to respond today, we really need to focus on the groups of people that understand the problem best. When you say that people understand the urgency, I mean, across the world, people don't understand the urgency. The place that I've found that people understand the situation best is in the German-speaking world and in other parts of Europe, Northern Europe, Scandinavia. There, people genuinely understand how urgent the problem is. They understand the scale of the changes needed. Not everyone, but a lot of people. And they have a willingness to make sacrifices for the greater good. So to me, the building block has to begin in Europe. It needs to begin probably in the German-speaking world. And that's where we can begin to create the momentum to push for the rest of the world to come with us. And I think we see the beginnings of that, and we have seen the beginnings of that over several years now in the German-speaking world. Other places that might help, I mean, if you look at the people that actually really understand that, it's a very strange group of organizations. I mean, the Catholic Church clearly understands, the Pope clearly understands how serious this is and the consequences. Strange enough, a lot of people in the Chinese government understand, because they will be very badly affected by this in the future. The military, the Bundeswehr, as well as the military in America, understand the consequences of this. The legal and insurance businesses, a lot of people there understand the consequences. So you begin to see this, plus Extinction Rebellion, Fridays for Future, you begin to see this strange coalition of people who actually get it. And if we can bring these people together, then I think we have the beginnings of some sort of change. We don't have to convince everybody. We just have to convince enough people to shift the needle and begin to move onto a more sustainable path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Graeme and Wolfram. We'll come back to that later.
Maybe one very short thing. I mean, I think what you said, so you showed clearly the urgency, and the urgency is absolutely there, and it sounds horrific. On the other hand, I must say, in order to see it from a positive side, I see many positive examples as well. And I really think we have to focus on them and try to copy and to spread it out as fast as possible. So I don't know, if you take the e-mobility sector of Norway, we all know Norway is a super small country, has 4 million inhabitants, is rich, is well-being, and so on. Still, if we have on worldwide average, as you said, 1%, 2%, maybe 3% of e-mobility, in Norway we reached in August 72% in new sales cars. Okay? Norway decided in 2025 they don't want to sell any internal combustion engines anymore. So what I think is even if this is a special situation, a small country, it's very important to show that it can happen. And I think the situation in South Korea is not so different from Norway. We as well, a small country with beautiful nature, we are sensible, we are, fortunately, most of us, economical well-being. So the new cars that we sell can enhance to very high levels to let's say, towards zero emission. Then obviously it still takes, even as you say, even as we have 100% newly zero emission cars, it takes 15 years to get the old ones rid of it. But at least you see the transformation coming and you see it very clearly. So I think as well from that point of view, what we do in South Tyrol does matter. Even if the numbers are super small and somebody could say, we are only 0.0 something % of world population, it's completely careless what we do. Nevertheless, I'm deeply convinced about this effect of being an example of what you do. And if we, as rich regions, are not able to do it, how can we ask China or India to decarbonize? So that's simply not fair and not possible. And at the very end, I think from the branding, and there you know much more than I do, but from a branding point of view of South Tyrol, it would make a lot of sense to decarbonize. Mm-hmm. And to communicate as well from a tourist area, from many senses, to be, look, we are living, let's say, in contact with our nature, and we show you nature, and we show you a lifestyle which is fun, but nevertheless respecting nature and respecting this in this way as well ourselves. But that's probably much more your business.
No, I agree. I agree on that. So, nevertheless, social and economic costs will be given. Yeah?
Will
so
be
we
given.
have to deal with them.
We have to deal with them.
To make clear communications.
And it will pain. And there will be pain.
There will be pain, yeah.
That is for sure. It's a transformation, and every transformation has winners and losers. And obviously we have to look, how can we take the losers with us, and how can we make sure that for them it's not too painful. But there will be pain.
Well, there would be an interesting question, again coming back to the global dimension, the role of China. Graeme, you were talking about the role of China. We're talking about sustainability, probably not so much digitalization, but let us do that a bit later. I move now into German. We all know, Graeme, that you speak an excellent German, so allow me to make a question now to Michaela in deutscher Sprache. Michaela, was geht dir durch den Kopf? Wir haben heute über psychologische, über soziale, natürlich über physikalische Energie gesprochen. Wir verhandeln gerade die große Transformation auf diesem Planeten. Du bist jeden Tag in den Bergen. Die Berge sind doch auch am Ende ein Speicher für Energie, aber auch eine Quelle für Energie. Aber sie nehmen auch Energie. Ja? Was passiert da oben auf den Bergen? Und wenn du in den Bergen bist, wie siehst du diese Diskussionen, die wir hier führen?
Ja, erstens einmal vielen Dank für die Einladung. Also ich habe mich gewundert, dass ich da irgendwo doch reinpasse, aber es stimmt schon, wir haben sehr viel, sind sehr viel draußen und wir werden auch konfrontiert mit diesen Problemen, die es mittlerweile gibt. Ich kann mich erinnern, 2007, der erste richtig große Felssturz in den Sechsner Dolomiten am Mainzer Kofel. 60.000 Kubikmeter Material sind da runtergekommen und selbst 3-4 Kilometer weiter entfernt hat man Fenster geputzt. So viel Staub hat das produziert und das war der erste richtig große Felssturz und mittlerweile gibt es diese jährlich. Und die objektiven Gefahren für uns Bergführer nehmen zu, für den Bergsteiger auch. Also es gibt Steinschlag, Eisschlag, die Gletscherspalten werden zum Teil unüberwindbar, Moränen werden größer, Gletscherfelder ziehen sich zurück. Also wir sind wirklich dieser Problematik auch ausgesetzt. Und vieles verschiebt sich jetzt, es verlagert sich zum Beispiel, früher hat man die Eiger Nordwand im Sommer bestiegen, das ist nicht mehr möglich. Jetzt ist es im Winter, im Frühling, aber im Sommer würde jeder das Leben riskieren. Also wir sind ja täglich mit Gast unterwegs als Bergführer. Wir selbst müssen uns eigentlich an die Nase fassen, weil wir sehr viel mit dem eigenen Auto unterwegs sind. Wir sind sehr zeitig morgens unterwegs, wo noch keine öffentlichen Verkehrsmittel fahren. Der Gast, also der Südtiroler Gast, der nutzt diese Verkehrsmittel sehr gerne und lobt diese auch. Also wir haben ein gut ausgebautes öffentliches Verkehrsnetz. Das ist für uns aber leider jetzt nicht möglich, wenn wir um 4 oder 5 Uhr morgens starten, dann ist natürlich der Bus noch nicht unterwegs. Und zum anderen natürlich diese Energie, von der wir auch kurz gesprochen haben. Also der Berg, auf der einen Seite gibt sehr viel zurück. Also ich kenne es von 2 Seiten. Ich war früher Krankenpflegerin und habe aus meinem Hobby, also vom Bergsteigen, sehr viel Energie mitgenommen in meinen Beruf. Der Berg hat mich geerdet. Ich bin ausgeglichen zurückgekommen. Zum anderen natürlich raubt es mir auch Energie, also es nimmt auch Energie. Man powert sich aus, was zum anderen auch wieder gut ist, weil man dann wieder, wie gesagt, geerdet zurückkommt. Als Bergführerin jetzt ist es ein bisschen anders geworden. Man ist täglich unterwegs, man sucht es sich nicht mehr nur in der Freizeit aus, es ist Beruf und man hat sehr viel Verantwortung. Und natürlich ständig unterwegs zu sein, jeden Tag früh aufzustehen, also ist teilweise auch kräftezehrend. Zum anderen bekommt man auch wieder viel zurück, wenn man morgens dann aufsteht und man ist draußen unterwegs, wo noch niemand oder sehr wenige Leute unterwegs sind. Die Ruhe, die Stille, die ersten Sonnenstrahlen, der Gast, der sich freut auf die Tour und die Wertschätzung vom Gast, also dem Bergführer gegenüber. Also es ist schon sehr viel Energie auf verschiedene Art und Weise im Spiel.
Ja, super, danke. Ich habe gerade zu Graeme geschaut und mich auch gefragt. Graeme, you were talking before about how can we convince others, and you were proposing to discuss with groups, with specific groups, and not so much with the whole society. So that was my understanding of that what you said. And now talking about mountains, mountains are very sensitive. People living in the mountains, they have special sensitivities developed with the centuries or the thousands of years. And I don't know, what do you say? You were also often in mountains. Can mountains give us a message for the rest of the world? In a more philosophical way, how to deal with energies, how to understand energies, and how to understand the need of, or eventually also the emergency to transform and to change and to accept also certain transitions. You were talking about transitions and not so much about transformations.
My wife was brought up in Switzerland, and we lived in Zurich and we lived in Vienna for a while, and it was only when I lived there that I really began to understand the importance of the mountains. And I think if you live in the Alps or anywhere near them, you understand how important they are. You understand that they get into your soul. Their permanence, their change is something which is very, I think, very important for all of us. And I think one of the things that Michaela is talking about there, which I think is very important, is that they are a very powerful means of getting this message across, because they are so permanent, apparently permanent, and because they're changing because of what's happening with the climate. They provide a very powerful way of getting people to understand. The trouble is that in much of the world, people have lost contact with nature. When they live in the city, they drive in their cars, they find everything in the supermarket. They don't even understand where eggs come from sometimes. And to take people out into nature, to show them what's happening, to show them that these wonderful objects that appear to be so permanent, that appear to have been there for millions of years, are suffering. I think that's a very, very powerful way of helping people understand the scale of the change that needs to take place.
Great, thank you.
Ja, vielleicht, dass ich das nicht auf Deutsch sage.
No problem.
Maybe if I can integrate, and I'm switching to German, so natürlich sind unsere Tätigkeiten sehr unterschiedlich. Trotzdem denke ich, sind sie in vielen Fällen wieder ähnlich. Und in einem, muss ich sagen, finde ich Bergsteiger einfach ein gutes Beispiel, an dem man sich orientieren kann, im Sinne von, wer sich vorbereitet, um auf den Berg zu gehen, wer auf den Berg geht, der weiß, das Berggehen ist nicht immer eine Freude. Nicht jeder Moment macht Spaß, weil es ist kalt, es tut weh, man muss früh aufstehen, man muss bereit sein, Opfer zu bringen, um bestimmte Erlebnisse dann nach Hause zu bringen. Die Erlebnisse sind aber so groß, dass in den meisten Fällen all das kompensieren, was man vorher vielleicht einstecken musste und auch zum Teil leiden musste. Und ich glaube, den Weg, den wir vor uns haben, ist zum Teil ein bisschen ähnlich. Ich glaube, die Genugtuung, wenn wir das Ziel erreichen, wird riesig sein und wird riesig sein für die gesamte Gesellschaft und natürlich insbesondere für unsere Natur. Aber wir müssen jetzt akzeptieren, dass wir Leidensmomente haben und haben werden. Dann müssen wir natürlich mit dem Thema Just Transition, mit dem müssen wir umgehen. Wie können wir mitnehmen? Aber wir müssen einfach davon ausgehen, okay, wir sind bereit, Opfer zu bringen. Sonst komme ich nicht auf den Ortler, geschweige denn vom Eiger oder was auch immer. Das wird nicht alles nur der gemütliche Sonntagsspaziergang sein. Das ist es nicht. Veränderungen sind raus aus der Komfortzone für sehr viele. Und ich denke, wir sehen es bei einigen Unternehmen, die gerade damit extrem erfolgreich sind. Viel erfolgreicher als vorher. Ich finde, ein fantastisches Beispiel ist der ehemalige dänische Gasunternehmen, früher des Namens Danish Gas und jetzt Ørsted, die ganz klar irgendwann entschieden haben, im Zuge des Gesamten, weil Dänemark so ein Land ist, wo die Transformation einfach akzeptiert wurde und wo man gesagt hat, nein, das kann nicht der Weg sein. Und die irgendwann gesagt haben, so funktioniert es nicht, wir verkaufen alles, was wir haben, nehmen das ganze Geld und konzentrieren uns voll auf die Erneuerbaren und sind damit jetzt ein extrem erfolgreiches Unternehmen in Dänemark, aber weltweit, investieren weltweit in erneuerbaren Angang, haben Dimensionen erreicht, die sie vorher nie erreichen hätten können, wenn sie sich nur um das Gas in Dänemark gekümmert hätten. Aber natürlich braucht es irgendwann die Entscheidung, ja, wir verlassen den bekannten Weg, wir verlassen das, was wir kennen, von dem wir gut gelebt haben, um in was Neues zu investieren, das wir nicht so gut kennen, aber es notwendig ist.
Ja. Vielleicht, Wolfram, darf ich da anschließen. Wir hatten gestern einen interessanten Vortrag von Harald Desing aus der Schweiz, der auch die Potenziale der erneuerbaren Energien deutlich hervorgehoben hat, aber natürlich gesagt hat, die Transformation braucht sozusagen sogar jetzt noch mehr fossile Energien, um am Ende diese solare Gesellschaft, von der er sprach, überhaupt entwickeln zu können. Ja. Wie siehst du das? Ja, also im Grunde genommen sagen wir ja, es gibt die Notwendigkeit, jetzt einen Stopp hinzulegen, gewissermaßen. Das ist das, was Graeme heute gleich mehrmals getan hat. Ja, gesagt hat, fertig, aus, jetzt muss es diesen Wechsel geben, also im Grunde genommen die Einsicht, dass etwas passieren muss. Und da war die Rede, dass die Änderungen eigentlich dazu führen, dass wir so viel fossile Energie brauchen, um diese solare Gesellschaft zu entwickeln, dass das auch noch einmal per se eine Herausforderung wird.
So maybe I change into English as well for you to make it easier. I think this might be necessary. As Graeme said, the problem is complex and the answer is complex. On the other hand, I'm a big fan in trying to simplify complexity, which is very difficult in this case. But I think the solutions are on several levels, and we have to be very clear where it is a problem of technology or application or further research or whatever, and where this phase has been done. And it is not a question anymore, do I want, should I do, but it is a matter of application in large scale. So in Italy, you might have followed Graeme, probably not, it's not important on global scale. We've got a new ministry, which is, in my opinion, a very good idea, a minister which is responsible for the energy transition, okay? Somebody who includes aspects of economy, aspects of environment, aspects of energy. Unfortunately, the person who covers the position of this super ministry said, well, we have to look for nuclear energy. And I say, nuclear energy is fantastic, but we won't have a nuclear power plant running in Italy for the next 20, but probably 30 years. And we don't need a solution in 20 or 30 years. We need to cut emissions now. So we have as well a target of installing a certain number of solar and wind and so on, and we are far lacking behind. But there are several countries, if we look around, we don't have to go far. We go to Spain, we go to UK, we go to France, which are much more active in doing that. So there is some aspect, I don't know yet exactly how to move, for example, the big transportation ship from Shanghai to Rotterdam with renewable energies. So this is a solution which for me is not yet fully clear. But how to build a zero-emission home, there is no question. We just have to do it. Mm-hmm. So I think there are certain things where we just have to decide we do that, full stop, and don't think about it anymore. And there are other things where we have to focus about directions, technology, further innovation, and so on. But there are some things where we just have to apply them.
Mm-hmm. Graeme? I guess you agree on that, but again, the question: how can we implement? How can we make the transformation? Yeah, and how can we? Let me allow to say, create enough energy in order to transform the need and the urgency in a let me say in actions, and in the passion to implement all these actions which are needed now.
Well, as I said before, I mean, a lot of it's about understanding. We have to understand the problem and spread the understanding, and then there are plenty of people who care. I agree with Wolfram completely that we need to bring together the organizations and the countries that are making a success of this. There are businesses that are vital to this. There is technology that's vital to this. I don't think we should be trying to work out how to send ships from Shanghai to Europe, which are using renewable energy. We need to stop sending the ships from Shanghai to Europe. We need to start doing things locally so that we use less energy. But we need to bring together the people that can see what's necessary and that have solutions to help build the momentum for change. Right now, there's an awful lot of noise going on and an awful lot of false solutions. And we need to filter those out. I mean, I took part in a meeting at the UN this week, and it was about carbon capture. And in the room were all sorts of people who were basically trying to keep the oil industry going and using carbon capture as a way to persuade everybody that that's okay. So it was a kind of a greenwashing. And we need to get rid of this sort of thinking. We need to get rid of the idea that by investing in solar power, it doesn't matter if we keep on mining lignite in Germany. We need to stop mining lignite in Germany. And I understand that has terrible economic consequences. So we need to find a way to compensate the people whose lives are going to be changed. Russia, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, all these countries are heavily dependent on the fossil fuel industry. We need to work together globally to find a way to compensate those countries so they stop doing what they're doing. So the secret, I think, as Wolfram said, is to find the people, to find the individuals, to find the organizations, and bring them together. Their number is growing. Every day there are more people write to me who want to take part in this transition. We need to bring them together and cooperate to make it possible.
Yeah, thank you. Coming back to Wolfram's saying about the comfort zone, we will feel pain, but on the other hand, we have too many people in the comfort zone at the moment. And so coming back to the mountains, man sagt immer so schön, von der Komfortzone müssen wir eigentlich in die Leidenschaftszone kommen, Michaela. Die Berge sollten doch eigentlich eine Inspiration dafür sein oder eine Hilfe. Ja? Diese Energie, die man bekommt, ist vielleicht auch eine Grundlage für die Leidenschaft, die wir brauchen, Dinge zu verändern. Wie siehst du das? Welche Erfahrungen machst du dabei, selbst auch? Aber auch wenn du Menschen begleitest, wenn du sie hinführst zu den Bergen. Ja?
Also Fakt ist, dass Leidenschaft auch Leidenschaft, gell? Das beinhaltet schon das Wort und das fängt an, wenn man morgens zeitig aufstehen muss. Da müssen wir schon diese Komfortzone verlassen. Also der Italiener denkt sich, chi me lo fa fare, wenn der Wecker läutet. Gell? Und ich denke mir oft, oder früher habe ich mir das oft gedacht, heutzutage als Bergführerin kann ich mir das nicht mehr leisten, zu denken, morgen stehe ich sicher nicht auf. Und am nächsten Tag bin ich trotzdem wieder aufgestanden. Und warum? Weil das positive Erlebnis überwiegt, wenn man diesen inneren Schweinehund einmal überwunden hat. Das ist einfach so. Das ist aber auch, das ist überall im Leben so. Wenn ich joggen gehe zum Beispiel und wahrscheinlich nach der Arbeit, ich komme müde nach Hause und es sieht mich einfach an, da jetzt zum Laufen und ich würde lieber was essen, mich auf die Couch vor die Glotze schmeißen, oder? Und wenn ich dann laufe und gelaufen bin, dann komme ich glücklich nach Hause. Das sind ja auch diese Glückshormone, die uns dann auch wieder begleiten und Bergsteigen ist halt einfach weg, einmal ein ganz anderer Blickwinkel, gell? Die Probleme werden einfach klein da oben. Und es sind sehr viele, die ganzen Farben, die ganzen Emotionen, die damit verbunden sind. Gell? Wir nehmen einfach da einen Rucksack voll Energie wieder mit nach Hause. Und das bewegt uns am nächsten Tag doch wieder aufzustehen, wenn dieser Wecker läutet. Ja, aber ohne, wie gesagt, ohne diese Komfortzone zu verlassen, wird es einfach nicht funktionieren. Weil das ist oft im Leben so. Und ich sage auch immer, dass das Bergsteigen bildet ja auch diese Persönlichkeit. Also wir lernen sehr viel in der Natur. Und wir lernen sehr viel über uns selbst, wenn wir einmal eben diese Komfortzone verlassen, wenn wir unsere eigene Leistungsgrenze ausloten, auch einmal darüber hinausgehen, jetzt nicht Kopf und Kragen riskierend, aber einfach einmal sagen, okay, dann sind es einmal nicht 1100 Höhenmeter, sondern morgen sind es einmal 1200. Und man ist dann glücklich, wenn man die schafft. Also es ist schon, man nimmt sehr viel mit und vor allem ist es sehr viel auch für sich selbst kennenlernen. Ja.
Super. Graeme?
Darf ich was sagen? If we approach this future with the mentality which says, I'm going to lose the chance to buy an iPhone every 18 months, I'm going to lose the chance to drive my car, I'm going to lose the chance to go to the Maldives on holiday, then it will be very difficult. But if we approach this future with the mentality which says, we can live better, we can live in better balance with nature, we can live in better balance with each other, we don't need to work as much as we're doing, we don't need all this output, we can live in better balance with our families, we can live a much happier, more meaningful existence. And I honestly believe that this is possible by making this transition. We can actually be happier than we are today. We need to change what we're thinking the goal is to make this happen.
Wolfram, your institute could also have the name Life, Quality of Life, isn't it?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Graeme, that the perspective, and I really try as well in my communication not to communicate a problem but the opportunities, because I think this is just more attractive. And we, I think, we are in the lucky situation that we have this nature in front of us, and that we still have that contact. I think, as you say, if you live in Shanghai, this is much more difficult because there's just so much concrete, so much people, so little nature that it gets all more difficult. But we have the luck to still be close to nature, and I think it gives us so much. So let's try to listen what it tells us. And we have to change, but we don't have to reduce our quality of life. And I think one, which may sound like a silly question, silly sentence, but I think in many cases we have to keep it in front of us. Consuming is not happiness. Happiness might be consummation, but might be completely different things. And in many cases, by consuming less, you are extremely happy.
Hence, we need a political frame which can help to make possible this transition, to create the incentives, to create the opportunities based on the problems. Graeme, you were talking about a new ecological civilization. You were talking about, let me say, also problems of capitalism. Yeah? We were talking about growth, inequalities. You were proposing today a basic income almost during the transition. So in my mind comes a discussion about the liberal and the political capitalism. Branko Milanovic, for example, comparing the Chinese way and the Western liberal meritocratic capitalism way. So what is the, let me say, what is the solution? We have two completely different ways to understand capitalism and to do completely different ways of how we implement. For example, interfaces between sustainability, ecological sustainability, and digitalization also. In what way digitalization can be a helpful way. So in other words, coming back to the big picture, you are at the moment in Taiwan. So how can we form a political frame in order to make possible that what you are demanding?
This is an incredibly complicated question because it's about capitalism and about a different system of governance and how we make it happen. What I think clear is that there's a lot of effort being made to simply soften the capitalist system, to make it more environmentally sustainable, but basically to keep its foundations as they are today. And that is not going to work, unfortunately. We actually have to introduce some very radical changes. To make that happen, I think we need to make people understand that there is a better future that can be had with a different system. We've had so far this battle between a sort of socialist, social-driven system and a capital-driven system, and we need to develop a different system entirely, which is focused on balance with nature, which perhaps doesn't have money, which encourages people to value the quality of life and not their material possessions. I mean, I've actually laid out a series of different conditions that would make this possible. We're not there yet. We're not at the state of being able to think about that. As I said earlier on, I think to move to a different political system is a process which will take perhaps many decades. We have to go back almost to the Enlightenment and say, where did we go wrong? Because we've reached a situation where we think democracy is the only way forward. We think capitalism is the only way forward. We think that science is all the answers. And I think we need to revisit all of those basic ideas and take a slightly different path. To me, this is a discussion we need to have over many years, and we need to plant the seeds of that discussion today. But the critical task now has to be to cut emissions. And that's the only thing we need to fight for. And we need to fight for that with everything we've got. We need to push for political change and elect people who simply want to cut emissions. That's all we need to do, and help everybody in the transition.
Mhm. Vielleicht ein kurzer Kommentar dazu. Also ich denke, ein Problem, das wir in Europa haben, ist das Faktum, dass wir in diversen Gesellschaftsschichten und in diversen Gesellschaften, auch in Deutschland gibt es Diskussionen. You said Germany or German-speaking world is in some cases we're pushing forward. That's right. In other cases, but this is in Italy as well, very strongly felt. We have to pay a lot of attention or think about how can we get out of the situation that we are a no society. Mhm. Wir sagen zu allem Nein. Und ich denke, aus dem Weg müssen wir irgendwie rauskommen, wenn wir diese Transition hinkriegen wollen.
Das wäre meine Frage an dich eben noch gewesen, Wolfram. Es war heute und gestern auch die Rede von sozialer Energie. Ja. Ich habe den Eindruck, dass die Naturwissenschaften, um es jetzt einmal ganz generell zu sagen, sich grundsätzlich einig sind, ja, wie das Ganze, was wir brauchen. Ja. Und wenn wir es nur ganz klar auf diese Aussage von Graeme reduzieren, cut emissions. Ja. Ja. Aber bei der Sozialenergie sind wir doch möglicherweise erst am Anfang.
Ganz sicher, ganz sicher. Und da ist vielleicht wieder, was Graeme auch sagt, das Understand. Also die Leute müssen verstehen, ja, wir müssen jetzt einfach Emissionen streichen. Mhm. Und dafür müssen wir uns ändern und wir müssen uns auch im Norden ändern. Also die Form, also wie die Engländer sagen, not in my backyard, das war jetzt okay für die letzten 10 oder 15 Jahre, but we can't go forward just saying, yes, we need windmills, but not in my area. We need solar, but not in our town. Das heißt, ich denke auch die Großen, was ich das Gefühl habe zum Teil, ist, ich habe gerade vor ein paar Tagen mit jemandem gesprochen, der sagt, es besteht ein Gap zwischen dem, was man auf europäischer Ebene denkt und dann, was lokal umgesetzt wird. Wir haben Riesenziele, wie wir rauskommen. Ein Bekannter von mir hat gesagt, ja, seine Eltern leben im Trentino, in einem kleinen Dorf, 200 Seelen. Und da ist jetzt beschlossen worden, sie bauen die Gasleitung hoch, um das ganze Dorf zu vergasen. Jetzt spricht ganz Europa davon, wir müssen raus aus dem Gas und jetzt hängen wir auch das letzte Bergdorf noch an die Gasleitung. Ich meine, das kann irgendwo nicht zusammenpassen. Mhm. Also ich denke, da müssen wir schon schauen, dass wir die großen Ziele einfach runterbrechen. Und das heißt, okay, wenn die EU minus 55% will, dann muss Italien minus 55%, dann muss jede Region minus 55%, dann muss jede Provinz minus 55%, dann muss jede Gemeinde minus 55%. Und das heißt, der Gemeindepolitiker kann nicht sagen, das ja, aber nicht bei uns, sondern sagen, okay, du willst das nicht, das ist okay. Aber dann musst du was anderes bieten.
That's what Graeme said before. So one aspect is the big picture, the global dimension, but the other one is the local one. So the implementation is definitely working in a very effective way on a local level. Graeme, your famous last words before I give the floor to Michaela.
Thank you. I think we've got to be careful not to get our heads around the idea that we can personally change the situation, that individual activities will change this. You know, if I buy an electric car or I don't take a flight and I take the train, if I turn vegan, that'll help, but it won't change the situation. It's far too big for that. The major polluters are the big oil companies and a lot of industrial sectors, the aircraft industry, the automotive industry, shipping industry. Those are the areas we need to focus on. And as individuals, what's important is that we have to work with others to make them change. It's not that we can change it by changing our lifestyles. We have to force political change and force the polluters, which is not us, the polluters, the companies and the organizations which are causing this problem, we have to force them to stop. And that's what we can do collectively. Work on the big polluters, not change our own lifestyles, because that's not going to be enough.
Yeah, great. Allow me to say, just we would have to discuss it in another occasion. Die Naturwissenschaften haben eine klare Idee. Die Sozialwissenschaften an und für sich aus ihrer Perspektive auch, aber was die Sozialwissenschaften zu wenig tun, ist das Ganze auf die Ebene der Energie zu bringen. Also soziale Energien oder der Zugang über die Energie und die Energieflüsse könnte vielleicht eine Hilfe sein, um auch diesen interdisziplinären Diskurs wesentlich mehr zu stärken.
Aber wenn ich das sagen darf, wir Naturwissenschaften haben es auch nicht geschafft.
Ja, gut, aber
also vielleicht da müssen wir auch noch lernen, ja, von anderen, wie kommen wir auf die verschiedenen Ebenen.
Es ist ein Tropfen auf den heißen Stein, ja. Aber es ist der Weg ist zu gehen. Und den Weg wissen wir grundsätzlich, und der wurde auch heute noch einmal ganz deutlich hervorgehoben. Und damit, Michaela, zu dir. Die allerletzten Worte bleiben bei dir. Was geht dir durch den Kopf? Was wird passieren, wenn du die nächste Bergtour machst? Vermutlich schon morgen. Was wirst du deinem Kunden sagen? Und was wird dir durch den Kopf gehen? Wieder zurückkommen zur Idee wie wir mit Energien eben umgehen.
Ja, ich denke, wir sollten nicht mit Füßen treten, was uns so viel gibt. Wir bekommen ja so viel also von der Natur und wir sollten respektvoll damit umgehen. Und ich versuche halt immer meinem Gast auch zu sagen, dass er seinen Müll mitnehmen soll, dass er nicht rumschreien soll, weil wir einfach irgendwo, das ist das Zuhause vom Wild, und irgendwie wirklich schauen, dass wir respektvoll umgehen damit und also der Natur mit allen Sinnen begegnen, und ja, die goldene, also jetzt irgendwo die Lösung zu finden für das ist schwierig, also im Kleinen versuchen, einfach den Beitrag zu leisten.
Ja, Respekt füreinander, aber Respekt auch für die Natur.
Genau.
Und um diese Energien auch zu positiven Energien zu machen. Ja. Und nicht die Entwicklung allzu sehr in Richtung negative Energien, die ja unweigerlich zu Aggression führen, gehen zu lassen. Okay. Dem ist nichts hinzuzufügen. There is nothing to add. I have to say thank you very much to Graeme for your presentation as a basis for this panel discussion. I have to say thank you very much to Wolfram Sparber and obviously also to Michaela Egarter. This is now the end of the second Futurological Congress in Bolzano-Bozen, and I guess we have a lot to do in the next months and years, bringing together our, let me say, our views, bridging, connecting, interfacing, creating a new world, as Graeme Maxton today were explaining us with his vision. I have to say thank you very much again to all of you, and thank you very much to the colleagues from EURAC, but also from Transart. A special thanks to the team of the Center for Advanced Studies, Elisa, Max, Anna, Marlies, Jeva, Valeria, Johanna, Alessandra, und special thanks to Michael de Rachewils again. Danke dir, Wolfram. Danke dem Team von Transart bzw. Transart 21, den Technikern, die das alles hier wunderbar gemacht haben mit Sirio und cordiale ringraziamento a tutti. Noch einen schönen Tag, ein schönes Wochenende und wir sehen uns gewiss wieder, wenn es darum geht, die Welt zu verändern. Die Notwendigkeit, das zu tun, haben wir, denke ich, heute sehr, sehr deutlich gehört. Alles Gute.